Hey bookaholics, and welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you the Bones book tag. Angela from the Literature Science Alliance, turns out, shares my love of Bones, the TV series. I could not resist when she did a tag with all the Bones characters. I needed to do it. So I rescheduled all of my videos so that I could fit this one in. And that's what we're doing today. I'm going to go through the tag. I'll leave Angela's tag link down below. And we're going to go through some Bones characters. And I'm very excited. Question number one is the diner. So in Bones, their hub, their like outside of work meeting place is this diner. It is like the place where everyone just kind of meets up, where they kind of talk about their personal lives a bit. And they always are talking about food, which always makes me rather hungry, not gonna lie. It's a cozy place. So the prompt for this one, a series or a book that you could reread forever, or a long-running series with new entries that get you excited. Now, I don't really have any long-running series on the go because I'm a binge reader. The only ones that I do have are Discworld and In Death, and neither of those really fulfill this prompt. So I'm gonna go with the series that I would comfortably reread, and I've gone with one that gives me like cozy vibes as well, one that I would reread for comfort, and I think that would have to be the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. This one is a cozy sci-fi series of companion novels. This first book is following Rosemary Harper, who joins the crew of the Wayfarer, who are basically the crew that travel across space to create jump ports where it makes for faster traveling. So they're the ones that do the long haul to create loop that then means that other people can travel faster. And she is liking the idea of being on this ship for an extended period of time because she is running away from her past. I really love this series. They're just so cozy and they are very preachy. I'm not gonna lie, they do have an outlook on humans and our failings and our virtues. But I love them. I just find them so cozy, so warm. I'm so sad there are only 4, but I would happily reread these anytime I'm feeling a bit blue. Question number 2 is for the titular character, which is Bones, Dr. Temperance Brennan. This one is a book that features a rational character. The thing about Brennan is that she is a very rational person and she's driven mostly by logic to the point where she can sometimes do a social faux pas, but at the same time she's an anthropologist, so she also has like a wider understanding of the world. So it's one of those situations where it's like she doesn't really understand why this would be offensive, but not because of anything other than she's seen in other cultures where it's not offensive, and also because to her it's not rational to get offended by this thing. This character isn't quite as rational as Brennan, but the thing is that Brennan's actually a really emotional person. She just purposefully buries it in rationality, but she's a very emotional person. She will be someone whose personality will become more abrupt if she's annoyed, or she'll like snap at people when she's not happy, and then she'll be like overly cheerful and willing to hear outside of the box thinking when she's in a good mood. So I think someone who is emotionally driven and also rationally driven, and someone who has an interest in the rest of the world and how it functions, and an interest in our place in the world, I've got to go with Lady Trent or Isabella Camhurst. Interestingly, by Marie Brennan. I didn't even do that on purpose. Lady Trent, Isabella, is a dragonologist and she studies dragons. However, these are her memoirs on how a woman came to be one of the most well-regarded dragon naturalists in the world. They are told in a memoir style, so you get her thoughts and feelings, and she is someone who she marries out of pragmatism. She is a very practical person. She's someone who's absolutely in love with her work, which is very much Brennan. And she's also someone who I think really is trying to push boundaries. She's constantly at odds with other people who would put her down. I imagine that Brennan, when she was first starting out as a woman in anthropology, would have potentially faced something similar. So I feel like there's a lot of overlap between the two. I don't think that Isabella has the same level of emotional detachment in terms of understanding other people's feelings that Brennan has, because with Brennan it could be a bit caricaturesque at times, and I didn't feel that with Isabella, but there is a lot of overlap, I feel, between the two. Question number 3 is our other main character, and that is Booth, or Special Agent Seeley Booth, who is the FBI agent that is the head of the investigations that then Brennan aids him with with her forensics. For this question, the descriptor is a book that features a white knight persona. So someone who is always trying to help others, always trying to save others, someone who would put the well-being of others before themselves. And this character, I feel like, is absolutely perfect for Seeley, and that is Will Lawrence from the Temeraire series. On the basis that Seeley was in the army, Will is in the Navy, and then they are in a new career in which they are working with someone else who is not quite as accustomed to the outside world. Like, Temeraire and Brennan are just the kind of people that keep Booth and Will on their toes, and I love that. And to me, yeah, Will is always trying to save others. He's always trying to put himself first. He is constantly the one that is like, listen, if anyone's going to get in trouble for this, it's me. I'll take the hit for it. I need to do this thing, to the point where he will, so he, like Booth, he starts out with like this loyal devotion to his country, where everything about his country is everything that he loves. And then he begins to learn that politics are made by people, and that sometimes you've got to play the game, and sometimes you've got to break the rules. And if anyone's going to break the rules, it's going to be him, because he's going to do it for the right reasons. So even their like rationale is so similar, and I don't know, just the way they approach the world, they have this alpha maleness about them, while at the same time having this level of kindness and compassion and gentility. Anyone is going to be Seeley, it's going to be Will. The next character is Angela, who is the one, like Angela from the Literary Science Alliance says, she's the one that pretends that she's not a nerd like everyone else, because she started out as an artist. She's also the tech one. She's a hacker, and she has like loads of software that she makes that can like help with the investigations and stuff. I'm calling bullshit on that, but she is technically an artist, and she likes to think of herself as a free spirit. Andrea is actually a character I have mixed feelings about, depending on the season, because she is one that is sometimes portrayed in a way that she's trying to just be complicated for the sake of being contrary, but she is someone who then pitches that as her just not abiding by typical social norms because she's a free spirit and she's an artist and blah blah blah. So I'm going with a character that I think fits that, someone who believes strongly in their craft, in their art, and that it serves a purpose to the wider world, and that in a way that gives them exemptions from complying with social norms. And to me, that is Starling from the Realm of the Elderlings. Starling is a character I also deliberately so have mixed feelings about. She is someone who is very complicated. She has an interesting relationship with our protagonist Fitz. Starling is a minstrel, so she's not an artist in the sense of like painting, but she is an artist, and she believes in her art and that it is important and that it can change lives and change the political spectrum. She is someone who's very devoted to it, and someone who then is unwilling to tie herself down to anything because it would interfere with her art. Her art is her first love, and anyone else would expect her to prioritize them over her craft. And I feel like that matches Angela really well. They're characters I have mixed feelings about, not because they're badly written characters, but because they are complex characters. I enjoy that comparison in my head. I think that they would hate each other. Because they would hold up a mirror to one another. The next one is Hodgins, who is out of the main cast, so the ones that are in every single episode. Hodgins is probably my favourite character. He starts out this just really grumpy, angry man. And he gets better as the show goes on. I love Jack. He is the bugs and slime guy. So he deals with particular. So he's a mineralogist, a entomologist, and a botanist, I think. Plants, minerals, and insects is where he's at. Hodgins is the one that deals with all of the really gross stuff. Like, he's the one that deals with fecal matter, and he deals with things that have started growing on decaying bodies. That's his job. So the prompt here is a character that finds beauty where people find slime. I have combined that with Hodgins' love of his job, like him being so excited about his job. It is the best thing in his whole life. And I am going to go with Greta Helsing, Dr. Greta Helsing from the Dr. Greta Helsing series by Vivian Shaw. Greta is someone, so she is the doctor to the undead. So she deals with banshees, with ghouls, with vampires, and she's the kind of person person that she's technically in a rather dangerous position. You know, she's dealing with what we would normally consider dangerous monsters, and she is their doctor. She has to deal with things that are potentially a little bit on the grosser side, but she loves her job. Like, her enthusiasm for her job, like, the books have her going to like seminars and wanting to invest in new machinery so that she can expand on her technique for blah blah blah, which is so Hodgins. Hodgins is constantly going over budget of the Jeffersonian, which is based on the Smithsonian. He's constantly going over budget because he wants new pieces of machinery that will help him do his job better, which is very much Greta. So I feel like that love of their job, even though others would consider the job a bit gross, is where I would tie Hodgins to Greta Housing. For Camille Soroyan, Dr. Camille Soroyan, she is the boss. She is in charge of the team, and she is not the protagonist, but she is the boss. That worked out really well, I think, for that show, because you don't always get a free pass, but at the same time she is someone who's like super supportive, and they butt heads at the very beginning, her and Brennan do, but then afterwards she settles into her role so well. One of the things that I really appreciate about Camille is that she kind of approaches the team the same way a mother would. Like, she's the kind of person that is very much trying to reason through it, and she wants them to explain why they would need certain tech, a certain procedure, they'd need a warrant for this, or they might want to go to this location. She's not just immediately like, no you can't, or yeah sure, it's okay, why are we doing this? And then, you know, every now and then they'll do like a physical experiment that definitely could have been done virtually, but she understands that her team are scientists first and foremost, so every now and then doing an experiment physically instead of doing it from the computer makes sense, because it means that they continue to love their job. So she's someone who seems to really think through and do it with this really caring, understanding nature about the people she's dealing with, and that's why she's so good at running this team. So for me, I have gone with Grandma Ursule from The Secret History of Witches. She does actually have her own book as well, and she still reminds me of Camille in that one. I do have a series review for this, so I'll leave that link somewhere. Actually, I think I've got series reviews for all of these. The thing about Ursule is that she is the kind of person who went through hardships so others don't, and that's how Camille approaches her daughter Michelle. But it's also the way that Ursule is like, okay, if we consolidate this, if we push together, if we work together, if we do these things, then we'll succeed, is very much the same as I would see in Cam. And then on top of that, we just have this person that everyone relies on. I don't know, I think that this one's a little bit more of a stretch, because for Ursule it is genuinely maternal, but I don't know, the way they approach getting shit done is very similar. Now, for my favorite character, seemingly Angela's favorite character from the Literature Science Alliance, I have to keep specifying because there's an Angela in the show as well. My favorite character in the show doesn't come in until season 3, but my favorite character in the show is Dr. Lance Sweets, who is the psychologist at the FBI. He initially starts out working with Booth and Brennan to monitor their partnership, and then eventually becomes also a profiler for the team. He is also just kind of the agony aunt for the whole team as well, and I love him so much. He's such a nerd and he's such a dork, and I love him. And the prompt for this one is a favorite character that either comes into the series later or that you became a favorite later on in the series. For this one, I'm gonna go with the Golem from the Bone Ships, well, from the Untitled Child series. The first book in this series was a bit complicated for me to get into. There's so many neologisms and it's so complex a world to get into that I didn't really feel any emotional investment. It was more an intellectual investment in this first book. And then by the second book, a few things happened and I was like, I absolutely love this character and I would protect them with my life. And it just snuck up on me. Like, I wasn't expecting to love the Golem as much as I did, because they are not quite as verbal as obviously the humans are, and they are very abrupt, but I loved them anyway. It wasn't until the second book where like certain things start happening that I realized that I loved them. It wasn't a gradual, oh, I'm starting to like you more, oh, I'm warming to you. It's like, no, it went from like, yeah, sure, they're there, to whoa, do not touch the Golem, thank you very much. And it wasn't until that moment that I was like, oh wow, this is my favorite character in the book. So yeah, that was an interesting realization for me. And I feel like that fulfills the prompt. The next prompt is Caroline. She is a lawyer. She's the one that facilitates their warrants. She's the one that is telling them kind of like the legal precedents for the things that they do. She's the one that arranges the like court cases. She's normally the one they're having to give the information to. Caroline is this New Orleans lady who's in maybe her 50s, and I love her. She's just this tiny lady who has so much attitude, and she's just so done with everyone's shit. Like, she's been doing this way too long, and I love her so much. Now, the prompt for this is funniest supporting character. This character is nothing like Caroline, but I don't know any characters like Caroline. I genuinely don't. Not that are as funny as her. I know ones that have the same like get up and go, sort your shit out kind of grandmas, and then I know characters that are as funny as her. Since the prompt was to talk about funniness, I've gone with that. And the funniest supporting character I can think of is Simon from The Hollow Places. This one is a borderline eldritch horror, and it's also hilarious. And Simon, who is the next door neighbor who runs a coffee shop with his sister, is just so funny. He's so funny. Yeah, I love him. I love him so much, and I think that he fits the funniest side character prompt perfectly. The next prompt is interns. So as of season 4, we do get interns. You get the intern of the week, and they kind of rotate. So they're all ones that have like they bring a dynamic and stay longer, and then every now and then you'll get ones that are just like a feature for one episode or whatever, and they're hilarious. As Angela said, you do get Betty White in one of the episodes, and yeah, like it's a fun conveyor belt of characters that bring a new dynamic to the team. Prompt for this one is to read a book that has 7 points of view or more. I have gone with The Many-Coloured Land, or The Saga of the Pliocene Exiles by Julian May. This is one of my favourite sci-fis that I talk about very rarely, so I should definitely talk about it more. This is a classic sci-fi, so we're following this cast of characters as they return to Pliocene Earth, and once there they realise it is not all that it seems. I love this series. I think there are at least 8 perspectives. I could be wrong. There are 8 people that go through in the initial team. I feel like we definitely acquire at least one more, but I could be wrong. This is one that definitely came to mind when I thought of this prompt, because people in lots of different situations in this new Pliocene Earth and how they tackle it. So it just seemed like a very ensemble cast. Because the other ones I could think of were The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons, and A Game of Thrones. 2 of which Angela put in her video, and the other of which is a very, very obvious one. Question 10 is Big Bad. In Bones, instead of creating even more unnecessary strife between the characters, what will happen is you'll normally focus, like you'll have a more dramatic thing happening with a case. So they'll normally bring in, for example, a serial killer, and they tend to really shake up the seasons. They tend to be really memorable for the seasons that they're in as well. We've got Big Bad, and it's who is your favourite villain. In Bones, my favourite villain is actually really early on, and it's Gormagon. My least favourite, quite controversially, is Palant. Like, I understand why people like him as a villain, but I can't stand his episodes. Well, for me, in a book, my favourite villain is going to be Fritha from the Blood and Bone trilogy by John Gwynne. This is just one that I have to talk about when I'm talking about villains now. She has taken over my life. I love talking about her in the Brothers Gwynne Discord as well. So like, just if you want to hear me talk more about Fritha, then Brothers Gwynne Discord. Because the thing is that with her, it's I support women's rights and I support women's wrongs. And she is very wrong, but I understand why. And I can't say I would have behaved hugely differently. Like, she is that villain that very much holds up the mirror to you of just like, this is what life looks like if you're in this situation. It's like, yeah, I can't say I disagree with her. I can't say that I would be different. I understand that she's a villain, but she's not a villain to me, because I love her, even though she does some really, really horrible things. It's a conflicting one. And I'm not the only one. There are several women in the Discord that are all the same. And you have, like, I've mentioned it in a live stream that the Brothers Gwynne did, and they were like, Fritha, really? I'm like, yes, I love her. She's a POV character as well. She's a villain, but she's a POV, so even more understanding and fleshing out. So I would highly recommend checking out this series, especially if you've already read The Faithful and the Fallen. And the final question, which is rude because it means there's no Zach Addy question. How dare you, Angela? Where's my Zach Addy question? The final question is love stories. So in Bones, there's an awful lot of will they, won't they. It takes a really long time for our titular pairing to actually get together. And then there are other relationships that are going on with some of the other characters. And there's an awful lot of will they, won't they. There's a lot of just like taking their time. They didn't rush the relationships, which I really appreciated because it didn't become monotonous. So the prompt for this one is your favorite will they, won't they relationship. And the whole premise of this book is a will they, won't they. Like, obviously it's a romance, so you know they will. Same as with Bones, right? Like, it took them ages to get them together, but you knew that eventually Bones and Bruce were gonna get together. Like, even from the first episode, you're like, okay, they're gonna get together eventually. And it's the same with this book, and that is The Undermining of Twyla and Frank. I read this in September, and this is the second book in the Chronicles of Tanria, the Tanria books, the Tanria series. I don't know what they're called. The first book is The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, and this second one is The Undermining of Twyla and Frank. And in this one, we are following two marshals who previously had very dangerous jobs, but following the events of book one, their jobs are becoming very boring. Until at one point they happen to encounter a dragon egg, and now they have to deal with the fact there might be dragons in Tanria. Twyla and Frank have always been best of friends. So he's divorced, she is widowed. They've been the best of friends ever since. When Harry Met Sally retelling, and we are following them as she begins to garner interest of this doctor who is a dragon specialist. I love this pairing. I know that a lot of people don't like this as much as they like Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. In the beginning of this, Twyla is very self-deprecating. She is someone who is basically, for as long as she can remember, been a mum. She's just been considered a mum. So like her kids are grown up, she's a grandmother, so basically when she's not at work, she's helping out one of her kids with grandkids, or she's putting her daughter through uni. Her son, he works in manual labor, and then he is one of those typical half-baked parents. Like, he helps his wife parent instead of just co-parenting, and she helps out a lot. So we have her in this very mumsy mindset. So she thinks of herself as unattractive, as frumpy, worried that no one will ever care for the rest of her life. And then she garners this attention. So there is an awful lot of her kind of self-deprecating at the beginning, which I can completely understand people disliking, but that is like a pivotal part of her arc. And as someone who's had 4 kids and has felt frumpy, like, I'm not Instagram model ready, I really related to her of just like, you're actually valuable just as you are. Like, you don't actually need to look better. It's not a story in which she begins to look better. It's a story where she begins to feel better, and I really appreciated that. So I really loved Twyla's perspective, and the relationship she has with Frank is just so beautiful. So yeah, I was really here for this relationship, and I very much enjoyed their dynamic. I have been talking for way too long. This video is arguably already far too long, but there we have it. It's the Bones book tag, which is my favorite tag on BookTube now. Absolutely love it. So thank you so much, Angela, for creating this tag, and thank you ever so much for watching. And let me know if you've watched Bones, then you know who your favorite character is. I need to know. If you have watched Bones, what are your thoughts on my assessment of some of these characters? I'm not going to be tagging anyone in particular. If you want to do this tag, do feel free to do so, because I have no idea who has watched Bones, and if you've watched Bones, what your level of investment is to be able to do a tag. But if you do the tag, please, for the love of God, tag me. I really need to see it. That is all for me. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye!